A team based in the West Midlands of England, West Bromwich Albion form one half of the Black Country Derby. They have had their fair share of ups and downs over the years. Set for another year in the Championship for the 23-24 season, can we get them back to the Premier League and make them the best team in the Black Country once again? Welcome to the Midlands. You join me on day one in charge of West Bromwich Albion. Let's have a little look around the club before we get in to a 5-season project. Starting off, we are going to be playing our first season in the Sky Bet Championship. We are predicted by the media to finish in 11th place, so it could be a difficult first season. Looking at the club history, they have won the top flight once, but that was quite a while ago. I do believe it was pre-war in the 20s. They have won 5 FA Cups. They have won the Sky Bet Championship 3 times. They have 1 Carabao Cup or League Cup to their name and 2 Community Shields. Let's go and look at the first 11 that we are going to inherit. So they like to play in a 4-2-3-1 system. So that is the system that I will implement for at least the first season. We will give it a good go to try and keep this as realistic as possible in terms of how we play our football. If we're successful, we might stick with it for the full 5 years. If we need to change, if we get out of the Championship though, there is a chance that we could move that tactic to another tactic. But let's look at some of the players that we have inherited then. So their first 11 looks like it's Palmer, Townsend, Peters, Ajayi, Pippa at right back, OK, Chalobah, Sarmiento, Swift, Wallace and Dyke. So let's look at some of these players then. Sarmiento being the first one, obviously, that catches the attention. The loanee from Brighton, no chance of turning that into a permanent deal. So we are going to try and use him as best we can in the first season to hopefully help us out of the Championship. We have Swift, who plays just behind the striker, 28 years old, valued at 6.2 to 7.4 million pounds. Hopefully he can get involved in attacks and again help us score goals going forwards. We have Wallace on the right hand side of the pitch. Jed Wallace, valued at 5.4 to 6.6 million pounds, 29 years old, likes to get the crowd going, hits free kicks with power and runs with the ball often. In the middle of the park we have Turkish player OK Yakuzlu. He is valued at 13 to 16.5 million pounds, valued as a star player in the team, so hopefully he's one that we could certainly use in the short term. Going forwards, we might want to replace him with a younger player, but he still looks as if he is an integral part of the team. We then have Chalobah next to him, Nathaniel Chalobah. He's a player 28 now, 2.2 to 3 million pounds, so hopefully if all goes to plan, he also will be long-term phased out of the team, I think. But it's one of those where how many we replace and how quickly we can do it. Then obviously the back four, Townsend, Peters. He's another one who's coming towards that end of career type of player. But he still has the stats that certainly will be value to us in the first season. But how long he will be at the club for, I am not too sure. Going forwards, let's have a little look at the board cultures then. So they want to strive to make progress on and off the pitch, work within the wage budget, grow the club's reputation, then informational objectives, maximum 1-year contracts for over 32s, maximum 2-year contracts for over 30s, minimum 2-year contracts for first team players. In terms of the 5-year plan for the competitions, reach the playoffs. They want to be competitive in the FA Cup, be competitive in the Carabao Cup. So all 3 of those should really be achievable. The playoffs were predicted by the media to finish in 11th, so that could be a push, but we'll give it everything that we have got. The only other side caveat to all of these types of saves, no transfers in the first window. We will have that turned off until January at least, just to give us a chance to look at the squad, see exactly where we can build, and like I said, with the starting 11, see what players may need phasing out both short term and long term. Then going back to the objectives then, end of the 24-25 season, contract will be renewed hopefully, work towards gaining promotion to the Premier League. By the end of the 25-26 season, they want to win promotion to the Premier League. And then by the end of the 26-27, look to build on promotion in the Premier League. And that's the same for the final season. Let's have a look at what's expected from us by the club supporters. So the supporter culture is reach the Championship playoffs, be competitive against Wolves if we happen to play against them, be competitive against Aston Villa if we happen to play against them, and finish above Birmingham in the league. So Birmingham obviously in the same division. We should be able to check that one off, although Birmingham in real life in 23-24 had a good season but had all the off the pitch kind of issues, so hopefully we can outperform then, and then we will get back into the Premier League, and then it's down to us to be dealing with Wolves and Aston Villa. So we now know everything that is expected of us. We know the starting 11 and the tactic that we're going to play. How are we going to get on as we look to rebuild West Bromwich Albion? Let's kick things off by looking at all of the transfers that happened in the first season. Now, you would have heard me say we didn't actually do any transfer business in the summer transfer window. We left it all for January. And it meant that when we got to January, we actually didn't have a transfer budget at all. We were overspent on wages. So we had to start moving players out in order to start our rebuild. The first player that we allowed to leave the club was Kyle Bartley. Now, we only got about £500,000 for him, but I felt it was a fair deal. He went to QPR. The next player to leave the club was Reece Cleary. We got £2 million for him. He went to Luton. One that probably could have held on to. I do think that he has a lot more developing to do, but in the here and now, the money was far more important to us. And the next player to leave the club is certainly going to cause a few issues. Now, I've had these kinds of sales before where the fans of the real club see the save and they go, well, what are you doing? Why are you selling? The reason that I sold Jed Wallace was because we got £25 million for him. And unfortunately for Jed Wallace, that money was far more important in terms of the project that I want to make at the club instead of the here and now. So it made perfect sense to get that money in the bank so we could start building a team going forwards. So the first player that we spent money on was Paulinho. He's a right back who is highly rated by our scouting system. He came in with a 4.5-star potential from Vasco da Gama. Only cost around £1.2 million. And I think he's one that has a lot of potential to develop into our system as we go forwards. The next player to come in was another Brazilian, also from Vasco da Gama, and another one that carries a 4.5-star potential ability. A £2 million deal for Kean Barros. Plays as a defensive midfield smasher who really does start to play some decent football as the season goes along. Wilson Samake was the next one to come in. He can play as a right winger, can play as a striker. Another deal that only cost around £1.5 million to complete, and another one that I think, as we go through the save, will start to develop into a role in the team, whether that be on the right side or as a striker. The next player to come in was Harry Suter. I only paid £2.5 million for him, which I thought was an absolute bargain. We did have to put him on £24,500 in terms of his wages, but he's a player that's played for teams like Stoke, Leicester. They have got kind of Premiership aspirations themselves, and he has a potential to go on and be a catalyst for us, certainly in the Championship and then possibly into the Premiership once we get there. The next player to come in was Kevin, another Brazilian, so we have kind of gone Brazilian heavy really. Had to get some work permits on the go, but Kevin is an attacking midfielder who can play on the left wing or the right wing. Currently injured at the end of season 1, but he does have a lot of potential going forwards. He has 14 for pace, 12 for acceleration, crossing of 15, dribbling of 12, finishing of 15. So he has really got a lot of potential to build into a role in the team. The next player to come in was Wendell. He's a striker, also Brazilian. He has come to us from Porto. This one cost around £3 million to get the deal done, and I think he's solid for the Championship. Might need replacing if we get into the Premier League, but he's 5'11". He has pace of 14, acceleration of 13, dribbling, finishing, and first touch of 13. And I think he will be sound if we get certainly into the Premier League initially, and then he could be one that gets replaced as we go further into the save. Final player to come in was Keiki Rocha. He can play as a defender centre or a right back, which is good for the versatility. He has decent pace of 12, acceleration of 12, tackling of 13, marking of 13. He is 6'5", so he'll be an asset from set pieces, and he also should slot in nicely as a centre-back alongside our other players. So that is all the business that we got done. I think in the end we spent about 14 or 15 million pounds of the money that we got from the Jed Wallace deal, so hopefully carry some of that forwards, and we sorted out the wage budget problems, so it was all looking rather healthy. But did the players have an impact? Let's find out what happened in the competitions in season 1. The first competition to look at is the Carabao Cup. We went in at the first round, drawn against local team Warsaw, and we would win 4-1 in the first round. In the second round, we would be paired off against Harrogate. We would go on to beat them at 3-1. In the third round, we would be paired off against Bournemouth. We had a 2-2 draw in the game, but went through on penalties. And then in the fourth round, we would come up against Manchester City, where unfortunately we would go out of the competition losing 2-1. In the FA Cup, we would be paired off in the third round against another local team in Solihull Moors. We would beat them 3-0. Into the fourth round, we would be paired off against Sheffield Wednesday, where we would win 2-1. In the fifth round, we would come up against Chelsea, and they would hammer us 4-1 for us to go out at the fifth round stage. So that would leave us with the championship. Now, don't forget that the media had us down to finish in 11th place. But we don't listen to the media, because we would go and win the league and win it convincingly. We would play in 46 games. We would win 30 of them, draw 7, lose 9 times, have a goal difference of 59, which was the best in the league, and we would finish on 97 total points. So we would win the league by 4 points from Leicester, 7 points from Norwich, and then we had Southampton, Ipswich and Birmingham all in behind us. Looking at some of the stats, John Swift would score 23 goals and be our top league goal scorer. Jed Wallace would finish the season on a 7.25 average rating, which is interesting because he only spent half of the year with us. He also got 16 assists in the league. Jed Wallace also got 6 Player of the Match awards. So, all in all, a fantastic first season from the competitions. Okay, we didn't do too great in the Cups, but you're not expected to when you come up against Manchester City and Chelsea in each of those competitions. But to go on and win the Championship at the first time of asking and get promoted back into the Premier League is exactly what we were looking for. And that gap of 4 points to get us there means that there's no playoffs for us. We go up as champions and lift our first silverware of the save. A quick look at the finances as we head towards season 2 shows that we have a transfer budget for next season of £39.7 million. We have a wage budget of £670,000. We're only spending £456,000 on the current playing staff. We do, though, have an overall balance of £8.3 million. So would it be really irresponsible of us to go and spend £31 million more than the board currently have? That is something we're going to have to weigh up as we go into season 2. Looking at the club vision to see how we've performed. So our job security is very secure. Our feedback from the board is an A-. But in terms of the actionable objectives, work within the wage budget, we're on course. Maximum 1-year contracts for 32s. Maximum 2-year contracts for 30s. We're not being judged. Minimum 2-year contracts now for first team players. End of next season, they just want to attempt to avoid relegation from the Premier League, and then hopefully we get a contract renewal if we're successful. To go back to the board feedback then, so they want to play attacking, direct football with making the most of set pieces, also playing entertaining football and counter-attacking football. Now, with the tactic that we've been using in this save so far, I'm not too sure we can do that with the personnel that we have at the club. So we're either going to have to go out and buy those kinds of players, or the board are just going to have to taper their expectations a little bit, because I don't think it's possible if they want to stay in the league to play that football. From the supporters, we get an A-. And once again, they want attacking direct football, make the most of set pieces, play entertaining football, play counter-attacking football. So their expectations in terms of other clubs, be competitive against Wolves, competitive against Aston Villa, and get the better of our rivals Birmingham if we happen to play them. Now, obviously, we're not in the same division. That one doesn't really apply. Notable highlights, so they're impressed with the 2-0 win against Preston, the highly impressive 5-1 dismantling of Rotherham, and pleased with the 2-0 victory against Leicester. They are disappointed with Semir J's recent performances. Before wrapping up season 1, I'm going to have a little look at the first team squad. We're going to look at it in 2 different ways. So firstly, I'm going to show you what I feel my best 11, or the 11 I would pick most often is. Then we'll have a look at my assistant's idea of our best 11 and see how the two match up. From that, we should be able to draw up where we have some weaknesses and maybe see where we can improve or strengthen the squad. So to start me off, I would go with Palmer in goal, Townsend, Suter, Keiki Rocha and Paulinho as my back 4. OK and Kayan Barros in the middle of the park. Diangana, Swift and Kevin across the middle 3 and Wendell up top. So as you can see, we did stick with the 4-2-3-1 for the first season. It got us where we needed to be in winning the championship, going up to the Premier League. We have a little look at some of the players that come in then. So Wendell, the first one, he came in January, played in 10 total games, scoring 7 goals. As I said at the time when I was announcing the signings, he might not be one that plays in the Premier League too often, but he's certainly given himself every chance with his performances early on in the save. If we look at Kevin, another one who came in January, he might be a little lightweight for the Premier League, but certainly is one who is a work in progress. I do feel he can get better, although this box down here with the fitness where it says sprained knee ligaments is one that causes me a little bit of worry, because it also means his bravery has dropped off completely. But he's a player that's definitely a work in progress. We had Swift playing behind Wendell. He had a really good season, played 41 games, scored 23 goals, had 14 assists, and he's definitely one that we are going to look to build upon when we go into the Premier League, unless an offer comes in that we absolutely cannot refuse. Kayan Barros, he had started a number of games since January, 13 in total, 1 assist. Didn't have the best of ratings, but I do feel that he's a work in progress also, and he's really starting to bed into the team. We then have Paulinho, who came in, made the right back slot his own. Another one who played in 10 games, and another one who has started to show good signs of development. And at the back we have Keiki Rocha. He's also shown really good signs of improvement, and I think that he could be set up to be a Premier League defender, and we have no real reason to replace him unless somebody comes along that really makes me change my mind. Looking at the squad planner then, and going into our best 11 according to our assistant. So he would go with Palmer, Townsend, Kipre, Suter and Avila, but obviously Avila is on loan, so wasn't going to include him because he'll go back to his club. We can't afford to pay, or I don't really want to pay for Avila in terms of the agreement that we have. So Paulinho was the player in purple. Then we've got Malumbi, OK Yokosulu. We've got Kayan Barros in purple there. We've got Diangana on the left, Swift and Sarmiento on the right. Sarmiento is another one we have no chance of keeping in season 2, but Kevin is the player in the purple box. And then we have Wendell and Daryl Dyke. So a lot of matching up there, and I do think that we are okay going forwards in terms of matching up how he's thinking and I'm thinking and where the squad is really going. In terms of the report, overall depth is an issue. That is something that seems to be cropping up quite a lot now. I'll be honest with you, I don't like to have mountains of players because none of them stay happy. You can't get the rotation right. So I do like to streamline my first teams, but I do feel that we still are going to need more players for the Premier League regardless. Then there's concentration, crossing, determination, long throws, work rate, teamwork, bravery, balance are some of the weaknesses, but the strengths, communication from the goalkeepers, eccentricity from the goalkeepers. Swift's 23 strikes ranked him second in the competition for the championship. Wage budget, plenty of room in the wage budget to go out and buy players of Premier League standard. Then the youth prospects, we have a long list of youth prospects who could come through. So hopefully we'll get to keep our eyes on some of those. And if any of them make the step up, we'll be able to show you those as we go along. And then jumping reach is the final one on there. There are a few others, but that's just a taster of exactly how we are thinking about the team. And I do feel like we're going to need to strengthen pretty much everywhere. I mean, if we go back and have a last look at this starting 11, Wendell, I think, will give him the benefit of the doubt. Kevin looks a bit lightweight, and then you've got these two players who are original. Then you've got Kayan Barros, who needs game time to improve, same as Paulinho and Rocha. But I do feel that overall this is a championship squad still. So hopefully, if we can move a few players on and build that balance up to not feel so bad for spending 31 million more than the club have, we might be able to just go out and strengthen in all of the positions. And if not, we're going to target certainly defence and attack. I think the midfield is okay for now. To kick off episode number 2, we're going to look at all of the transfers that happened in season number 2, starting off with the players that have left the club, the first of which was Carlan Grant. He's a player that wasn't in or around my first team squad really, couldn't get in, asked for a transfer. Sheffield United came along with £12 million and we decided to cash in whilst we could. The other player to leave this season was Wendell. Now, you would have heard me say at the end of the last episode I was going to give him a chance in the Premier League. It just became very clear very quickly that he wasn't going to be cut out for it. Stuttgart came in with an offer of £1.5 million. We, I think, only paid 2.5 to 3 million for him, so we cut our losses and we allowed him to move. So we had kind of recouped around 14.5, 15 million pounds. We added that to the 39 already in the transfer budget, and it meant that we had about 55 million pounds to spend. And spend it we did. Now bear with me, there are quite a few of these as we go through them. So let's kick things off with Shola Shortire, the FM23 wonder kid, who is now an FM24 wonder kid, and the first of our youth kind of project, shall we say. You're going to see there's a bit of a pattern here as we go through to kind of bring the average age of the squad down. Now Shola Shortire is a lethal player with quick pace, quick acceleration, good dribbling, finishing and first touch. Hopefully we can bed him into the first team and he'll become a bit of a star. The next player to come in was Nasi Anuvar. He's another previous FM wonder kid. Used to be at Ajax, has bounced around a bit at Trabzonspor and 20. And now we have picked him up to plug in on the left-hand side of our attack. The next player was João Goncalves. He's a goalkeeper who we only bought him really to be a bit of competition for Parma. He ended up beating Parma and taking his number 1 jersey. The next player was Jamal Lascelles, free transfer from Newcastle, absolute no-brainer, Premier League experience, solid defender. Nelson Wiper was the next one to come in. We paid around £6 million to FC Mainz in Germany, picked him up, and he could be an absolute star in this save. 20 years old, an absolute bargain in the making by the looks of things. The next player was Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Now, we needed a player who was versatile, could play a number of positions and was English, and this was the player that we stumbled upon. £3 million, brought him back to England from Lyon, and I think it's an absolute sound purchase. The next player to come in was Amari Forson, another Manchester United wonder kid, another one who can play in a number of positions, whether it be in midfield or in the wide positions, and one with a big future, hopefully. The next one to come in was from Manchester City, so not only are we becoming a youth kind of movement, but a Manchester youth movement. This Norwegian has got, hopefully, every chance of becoming a first teamer for the entirety of the save. He looks the part. We paid £7.5 million to get him from Manchester City, and I think he could go on and be a bit of a star. And the final player to come in season number 2 was Rob Holding. They paired up with Lascelles, and obviously we already have Rocha, and we have a number of other players who can play as centre-back. We now have a lot of experience at centre-back, so hopefully with the players that we've brought in, we will have a good chance of having at least a good defence as we go into season 2. So let's find out, did the players have the impact that we needed? So this season, as a Premier League team, we entered the Carabao Cup in the second round. And unfortunately, that would be the only round, as we were drawn against Crystal Palace in the second round and we lost 5-2. In the FA Cup, we would join in the third round, where we were paired off against Sunderland. We would beat them 3-1 in the third round to progress into the fourth round, where we would be drawn against Manchester United, and unfortunately, we would go out of the FA Cup losing 5-3. So with the cups out the way, that only leaves the league to recap on, and luckily for us, we managed to finish in 10th place. Now, the board only wanted us to avoid relegation, and we did that with flying colours. As you can see, the 3 teams that went down finished on 22, 28 and 28. We managed to get 52 points in our first season back in the Premier League. And we got there by playing 38 times. We won 15 games. We drew 7. We lost 16. Did have a -5 goal difference, but we finished on 52 points, and that was joint with established teams such as Crystal Palace and even Newcastle. We did finish 10 points behind Everton, who finished in 8th, and we finished 12 points behind Aston Villa, who finished in the Conference League positions. In terms of the stats, Nelson Wiper got 21 league goals in his first campaign in England, which was absolutely fantastic. He has been a standout performer for us in this first season back in the Premier League. So that means we have survived in the first season of the Premier League. We finished in 10th place, which is fantastic. The cup competitions, once again, we got knocked out early, but that was probably a blessing because it meant we could just turn all of our attention to staying in the Premier League. Looking at the finances, as we head into season number 3, you can see that we now have a transfer budget of £47.9 million. We have a wage budget of £1 million, and we're pretty much spent to the limit of that. But the overall balance this time is £47 million. So if we was to spend every penny of the transfer budget, the board would pretty much have no money. So once again, it's going to be one of them. Can we raise a little bit of funds by selling a few fringe players just to give us a buffer? And can we spend the £47.9 million? That's going to be the question for season number 3. In terms of the club vision in season number 2, so our job security is secure. We managed to get a B+ from the board. In terms of the objectives, work within the wage budget, we're on course. Now they only want minimum 2-year contracts for first team players, and they are not judging. In terms of the 5-year plan going forwards, again next season, avoid relegation from the Premier League, which hopefully now that we are through the first season of being in the Premier League, that should get easier as we go along. In terms of the board feedback, the board culture, they still want us to play attacking, direct football, make the most of set pieces, play entertaining and counter-attacking football. Their highlights, fairly pleased with the quality of pressing on display using the Gegenpress, pleased with the level of support in the squad, pleased with the 4-2 Premier League victory over Southampton. They were disappointed about the 1-0 defeat against Crystal Palace, the 3-1 defeat against Tottenham, and the 4-3 defeat against Manchester United. Just shows you how far we've come when the board are disappointed to lose to Manchester United. In terms of the supporter feedback, they pretty much want all of the same things from the culture. In terms of the expectations, be competitive against Villa, get the better of our rivals Birmingham, and then be more competitive against Wolves if we happen to play against them. So all in all, I think that's good feedback from a first season in the Premier League. We're securing our job, we're securing the Premier League, and we do have the supporters on side. To round off season number 2 and start to prepare for season number 3, let's go through our first team squad. As always, we're going to do it in 2 ways of looking at my best 11 and then my assistant's best 11 and see how they match up and see if there are any areas for improvement. So to start us off, we have got Goncalves, Maitland-Niles, Suter, Holding and Paulinho. We then have OK, Kay and Barros. On the left, Nasir Nuvar, Shortire and Bob on the right, and then Waper up front. That to me is my absolute best 11. We show you some of the players and how they've got on across the season, starting off with our brand new striker Nelson Wiper. Yeah, fantastic. He managed to get 23 goals from 36 games in all competitions, 21 in 34 in the league. He looks like he could go on to be an absolute star. Nasir Nuvar, he had a good first season at the club also. He played in 36 games, had 9 goals, 5 assists. Overall, a 6.68 average rating, but he did play well in the FA Cup. On the other side of the pitch, Bob, he has come in. He has played in 14 games, scoring 4 goals, providing 6 assists, and one that is really started to step up on the right-hand side of the pitch. Sholas Shortire, he has played in 24 league games. In fact, 22 league games, 24 in total, 4 goals, 6 assists, and I think he's one who, as he develops into the save, will become even better as we go along. And then Kayan Barros is in his 2nd season now. He's still developing, still coming along as a player, and he really is starting to find his feet at the club. At right back, Paulinho is still developing too, 20 years old now, made that right hand side of defence his own, and I think going forwards he could be a big player in the save. Then we've got Suter, Holding and Maitland-Niles. If we go over to the squad planner, let's have a look at our best 11 according to the assistant manager then. So he's gone with Goncalves, Toffolo, who was a signing that we bought in on a free transfer as a squad piece. Not really a major bit of business. We have Rob Holding, Harry Suter and Maitland-Niles on the right. So he just switches the fullback. Kayan Barros, OK Akuzlu, which is the same as what we had. Grady Diangana, Swift and Bob. And then he had Wiper up front, and Samake is now the player in purple. But also, if you look at the rest of the purples, Anuvar, Shortire, Kevin, Paulinho. So we are quite matched up in terms of where the team is. I am more willing to give those younger players a first team place sooner rather than later. Looking at the strengths and weaknesses in the team then, so stamina isn't a collective plus point. Off the ball, passing, balance, bravery, pace, penalties, tackling, vision, determination. In terms of the strengths, Wipers 21 goals. Mowat has been in good form with a 7.72 in his last 5 matches. Goalkeeper's collective reflexes, defensive depth is good, midfield is good too. So those are just some of the positions and some of the strengths that we have within the team that we already have. So to round off season 2 then, just to reiterate once again, we are a Premier League team now. We have 52 points. We finished in 10th place, so next season we will look to build upon that and also maybe have a bit more of success in the Cups. To kick off episode number 3, let's go through all of the transfers that happened in season number 3. Now, you might want to buckle up because there's a lot of transfer dealings that happened in season 3 as we look to kick on from that 10th place finish. The first of the players to leave, though, was Alex Mowat. He has gone to Saudi Arabia. Wasn't going to get into our new look team. He's the wrong side of 30 for that, it seems. But he was the first one to move on. We have let him go to Saudi Arabia and Al Khalij. We then let go of Keiki Rocha. Now, this is a difficult one because obviously in the first season we signed him and he had great potential. But the players that we signed now have to be of Premier League quality. And he just wasn't matching up. International came in. They gave us £7 million. And that was a sound deal for us. The next player to leave was OK Yokozulu. Again, he is a player that was here at the start of the save and a player who is now probably on the wrong side of 30. Still looks a fantastic player, but the way that we are building this team now really is going in one direction. And the final player to leave the club in season 3 was Josh Maja. He's a player that had come to us from Bordeaux. And another one that goes out to the Middle East to play for Al Tal. So, with those players leaving, we needed to sign reinforcements, and reinforcements that not only were Premier League quality, but players who could go on to be future stars. And we started off with Nat Phillips. Not the player that you expected straight away, but he was a free transfer. Liverpool had allowed him to leave. We picked him up as a bit of a rotation piece just to get a bit of squad depth at centre-back. And pairing up with him was Joe Rodon. He's another one who has been a Premier League player, was at Leeds United. I think he was also at Tottenham, Burnley, those kinds of teams. So he's got Premier League experience. Was again on a free transfer and we signed him. It just seemed a no-brainer. And the final free transfer that we made was Taylor Harwood-Bellis, 24 years old, can play in a couple of positions, both right back and centre back. Played for Manchester City previously, been out at Girona, and now we have picked him up to plug him into the team. Then we started off on a bit of a wonder kid trend. Adam Wharton is the next player to come in. Can play as a defensive midfielder or a central midfielder. Signed from Wolverhampton Wanderers, which is quite controversial. It did cost us £20 million, but I think in the long term he's a player that really is going to be worth the money. The next one to come in was Arthur. He's a right back, so he's going to go straight in at right back. Paulinho will challenge him for the spot, but he's superior to Paulinho. 23 years old, signing from Leverkusen. Seems an absolute sound signing. The next player was Martin Neto, a wonder kid who comes from Benfica. He has the potential to go on and be absolutely anything. 23 years old, will be perfect in the middle of the park. Tom Roth was next, the other side now for wing-backs. 21-year-old German, picked him up for about £7 million, was cheap as chips. I think he's really going to develop into a player that is fantastic. And if we really needed him to, he can not only play on the left, he can come inside also, standing at 6'4". The next player to come in was Dane Scarlett, another previous FM wonder kid. Kind of that star has faded a little bit now. He has been out and about and round the clubs with Portsmouth, Ipswich, Bristol City, those kinds of teams. But I do feel that he could do a job when Waper's not in the first team or is away from the first team. So it kind of made sense to go and pick him up for a couple of £1 million and just see what he can do. The final player to come in is an absolute world star in the making. And it was quite a relief to see that he wanted to join West Brom, because we had tried to do this deal before and he turned us down, saying we weren't a big enough team. But now we're a Premier League team. We managed to get Luis Guilherme, a true Brazilian wonder kid. When you look at that pace, that acceleration, the dribbling, first touch, the determination, this kid has the lot. Could be a true star for the rest of this save. We did have to pay £13.5 million for him, which again is absolute cheap as chips. Couldn't turn it down, had to snap him up, and we got the deal done. So, with the players leaving and a raft of players arriving, could they gel quickly enough to get us a better finish than 10th in the Premier League? To start off the roundup of the competitions, we have gone to the Carabao Cup. We entered in the second round and we were drawn against Bolton, where we would win 3-2 in the second round. Moving into the third round, we would be drawn against Leicester. We would beat them 2-1. Into the fourth round, we would be paired off against Arsenal, and sadly that is where our journey would come to an end, as we lose 3-2 in the fourth round. In the FA Cup, we would join in the third round. We were paired off against Fulham to win 3-0 in round 3. In the fourth round, we would be drawn against Charlton, where we would win convincingly 4-0. In the fifth round, we would be paired off against Chelsea. We'd draw 5-5 in the game and go through on penalties. That put us in a quarter-final place against Nottingham Forest. We would win that game 2-1. In the semi-finals, we would be paired up against Leicester. We would win 5-0, and that meant that we would be in the final against Manchester City, where we would go on and win the competition 1-0. A crazy game. We did okay. We had 4 shots, 3 of which were on target, had an XG of 1.01, scored the goal through Waper, and we went on to lift the FA Cup. Fantastic way to round off the cup competitions. And so on to the Premier League. Last season we finished in 10th place. This season, 7th place. Qualified for the Europa League, obviously, after winning the FA Cup. But we were so close to 6th place in the league anyway, that I really do feel that we deserved it, even if we hadn't have won the FA Cup. So this season we played 38 games. We won 18 of them. Drew 7. Lost 13, had a goal difference of just 3, but at least it's a positive, not a negative like last season. And we finished on 61 points. Now, if you look at that, it's 10 points better off than last season. Well, 9 points, I think. We finished on 52 last season, 61 this season. But 62 for Tottenham, 62 for Liverpool. We are so close to those two teams. And we were 2 points ahead of Brighton, 3 points ahead of Brentford, and 4 points ahead of Newcastle. So the Premier League spread between 5th and 10th was so close this season. We luckily came out on the right side of it. Above Liverpool, we were nowhere near those, so we couldn't have got anywhere near the Champions League, but certainly we were well worthy of our place in the Europa League. Looking at some of the player stats, we don't really feature too much on here. Well, Nelson Waper does. He got 25 league goals in his second season. You then got Waper with 8 Player of the Match awards and yellow cards, Roth and Malumbi. So, a brilliant season in terms of competitions. An FA Cup win in a final against Manchester City was fantastic. The Carabao Cup knocked out in the 4th round, but the Premier League getting into the Europa League through the FA Cup, almost getting into the top 6, but finishing in 7th place on 61 points. Quick look into the finances as we head towards season 4 shows that we have a transfer budget for season 4 of £52.9 million. We have a wage budget of £1.3 million. We're spending £1.248 million. The overall balance of the club is £25 million. So once again, we are being given far more money to spend than the club actually have. So it's another one of those, what do we do? Do we go and spend that £50 million and kick on, try and get into the top 6? Or do we be frugal, try and move some players on, and then not put the club in a precarious financial position? Going into the club vision, we are now very secure in our job. We got an A- from the board, but most importantly, the owner is now looking to sell the club. So they have altered the 5-year plan until the situation has been resolved. They won't set any long-term plans. That's both a good thing and a bad thing, because obviously if you follow West Brom in real life, their owners are a little bit hit and miss. So it might be that if we get new owners, we get big investment, but also it might mean that we are on the chopping block ourselves and really have to perform going forwards. But whilst we're here, the actionable objectives, we have achieved both of them. Work within the wage budget, we're on course. Spend the original transfer budget, they are delighted. Now that one always baffles me, because last season we were smack bang on 49 and 49 million in terms of what we had. This season we are 30 million almost over what the club actually has. So it'll be interesting to see if they put that one in for next season. Minimum 2-year contracts for first team players, they are not judging. Be competitive in the Europa League and become an established Premier League team. So I think that we're doing that anyway. Looking at the board feedback, play attacking football, pleased. Direct football, satisfied. Make the most of set pieces, disappointed. Play entertaining football and counter-attacking football, they are pleased. Looking at the supporters, we get an A- from them too. Supporter culture is pretty much the same. They are pleased with the attacking football, satisfied with the direct football, make the most of set pieces, disappointed, play entertaining football, pleased, play counter-attacking football, pleased. Then they want us to be competitive against Aston Villa, get the better of our rivals Birmingham City and Wolverhampton Wanderers. So it's good feedback really. A-, job is very secure. I think it's a successful season, and we've now got to really push on in season 4. As we head towards season 4, let's have a look at the first team squad as we leave season 3. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is the tactic has changed. Gone is the 4-2-3-1 and in is the 4-3-3. I think in the Premier League you need a bit more midfield stability, and this tactic absolutely gives us that. So once again, I'm going to look at my starting 11 that I would normally pick on a match day, and then we'll look at what the assistant thinks that I should be picking, and we'll look at the discrepancies and see where we can identify any weaknesses. So my 11 would be Goncalves in goal, Roth at left back, Rodon, Holding and Arthur at right back, Malumbi, Wharton and Neto in the midfield 3. On the left hand side, Nasir Nuvar, Lewis Gilherme on the right, and then Wiper up the top of the pitch. If we have a look at some more stats, Wiper is being absolutely fantastic in this save. This season, 39 starts, 30 goals in all competitions. If we have a look at him, 21 goals first season, 25 the second, 46 goals in 70 appearances is absolutely fantastic. What a bargain he was. £4.5 million. Go and get him. He really will enhance your team. Lewis Gilherme, he's another one started to really come along now as a player. I know that he's a wonder kid anyway. 35 appearances, 9 goals, 10 assists. Wonderful, wonderful player. On the left-hand side, Nasir Nuvar, again, being a regular, 38 games, 13 goals, 7 assists in all competitions. Overall, 70 appearances and 17 goals for the club. And then some of the other wonder kids that we've brought in. So Neto, he has started in 46 games in all competitions this season, scoring 17 goals from the middle of the park, 10 assists, an average rating overall of 7.05. Alongside him, Adam Wharton. He has played 38 games, 7 goals, 7 assists with a 6.82 seasonal average rating. And then at left back, you've got Roth, 42 games, 5 assists. You've got Arthur at right back, 43 games, 1 goal, 7 assists. And the defensive partnership of Rodon and Holding has done its best to really hold off the Premier League attacks. Looking at the assistant best 11 then. So he has gone with Goncalves, Roth, Harwood-Bellis, Holding and Arthur, Malumbi, Wharton, Neto, Onuvar, Guilherme and Wiper. So pretty much the same team apart from Harwood-Bellis, who I wouldn't personally play as a centre-back. I'd play more as a right-back, but it obviously shows he has the potential to play in that position. If we go to the assistant's report, weaknesses in the team: stamina, bravery, decisions, crossing, tackling, concentration, penalties, work rate, finishing. But the strengths are youth prospects that are at the club, punching tendency from goalkeepers, top goal scorer, Wipers 25 strikes, ranking 3rd in the competition. His form has been fantastic. Goncalves is the best of 3 good options available to play in goal. And then defensive depth, as always, is a good thing. So a few more players probably to come in for season 4. There obviously are places we can improve, but it also is going to depend on how quickly those wonder kids do improve as to whether we replace players or not. And I do think that if we get that £52 million, it might not be a million signings this time. It might be a few quality signings. So to wrap up season number 3, we finished 7th in the Premier League. We won the FA Cup, knocked out in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup. So all in all, a fantastic season number 3. To start things off in episode number 4, we're going to go through all of the transfers that happened in season number 4, starting off with the players that have left the club. The first of which was Wilson Samake. Had high hopes for this player. Couldn't get him a work permit, but strangely Motherwell could, so I'm not too sure how that's worked. But he has been allowed to leave the club and go to Motherwell. The next one to join him in Scotland was Harry Souttar. Wasn't happy when we brought in other defensive reinforcements. Managed to get around £8 million for him, which was not too bad. The next player to go was John Swift. We allowed him to go to Cardiff for £2.5 million. Had a really good first season, but at the age of 31, he wasn't getting into my first team. He asked to leave. We decided to allow him to go. And the final player to leave in this season was Taylor Harwood-Bellis. Now, we only bought him in last season, and he would have actually been in and around the first team. But Alfire came along with a bid of £15 million. We got him for absolutely nothing. So the £15 million was completely worth the sale. He has gone out to the Middle East. So with those players leaving, we needed to start signing players. The first of which was Jan Paul van Hecker. He replaces Harry Souttar. In fact, he will go straight into the first team. He's another tall, strong centre-back. Next up was Diego Llorente, another free transfer that we managed to capitalise on. At the age of 33, he certainly won't be a first teamer, but he certainly can play in cup games and be a rotation piece when we need him. Next player was Cesare Casadei. He's a defensive midfielder, attacking midfielder who plays in the centre of the park. The former Chelsea player, Leicester player, Reading player. He's been around quite a bit, but he is one that pops up on Wonder Kid lists, and he was available for just £5 million, which was absolutely fantastic. Next up was Monchu. He was the final signing, actually, of season number 4. And he's a player that should go in and give us a bit of experience in the middle of the park. Another one that wasn't costing us the world. And we just thought it's an absolute no-brainer to pick him up. So that's all of the transfer dealings done. How are we going to get on in season 4 in the competitions? To start off the competitions, we're going to be looking at the Community Shield. Now, we won the FA Cup in the previous season, which means that we would play against Manchester City. And we would beat Manchester City 3-1 in the Community Shield with goals from Wiper and Onuvar, giving us a Community Shield to back on to our FA Cup success. In the Carabao Cup, we would come in at the 3rd round stage. We were drawn against Notts County, where we would win 3-1. In the 4th round, we would come up against Liverpool, though, and they would beat us 3-0. In the FA Cup 3rd round, we were drawn against Bristol Rovers. We would beat them 2-0. In the 4th round of the FA Cup, we were drawn against Everton, where unfortunately we would exit the competition losing 2-1. In our first time in the Europa League, we would finish 3rd in the group stage. In the Europa League, for the first time, we would go into the group We would enter the Europa League for the very first time, and we would go into the league phase and actually finished in 3rd place. We would play 8 games. We would win 7 of them. Didn't have a draw. We had 1 defeat against Napoli. We had a goal difference of 23, and we finished on 21 points. That would put us through into the next round, which would be the round of 16, where we would face off against Galatasaray. We would beat them 3-1 on aggregate. In the quarterfinals, we would be drawn against Lille, where we would win 5-3 on aggregate. And then in the semi-finals, we would come up against Tottenham, where unfortunately we would be knocked out 3-2 on aggregate. So in the Premier League for the 3rd time, we would manage to finish in 5th place, fantastically qualifying once again for the Europa League for the next season. This season we would play 38 times, we would win 22 games, we would draw 4 times, lose 12, have a goal difference of 11, which is getting slightly better season on season, and we'd finish on 70 points. Now that definitely is getting better season on season. 8 points better off than last season. Only finished 2 points behind Arsenal, who would end in the Champions League places. And we were only 8 points behind Liverpool, who won the title. So fantastic progress being made at the club. Looking at a few stats, Waper would get himself 21 league goals this season, and Arthur would get himself 13 yellow cards. So once again, a big leap forwards in terms of the Premier League. 70 points this season, finishing in 5th place, qualifying for the Europa League again. We got to the Europa League semi-finals this season. We didn't do too great in the domestic cups, but we did add the Community Shield to our growing list of trophies. Looking at the finances as we head into the final season of the Save, we now have a transfer budget of £67.6 million. We have a wage budget of £1.6 million. We're currently spending £1.5 million on wages. In terms of the overall balance, we have £39.2 million in the bank. If we're going to push on, if we have any chance of finishing in the top 4 and qualifying for the Champions League, we're going to have to spend all of that transfer budget, and the club might have to endure a bit of pain in terms of that gap in the overall balance and the transfer budget. Looking at the club vision tab, so the first thing to say is that the takeover fell through and nobody has come back to bid for the club, so we are still owned by the original owners. The actionable objectives: work within the wage budget on course, spend the original transfer budget, they're reserving judgment. By the end of next season, be competitive in the Europa League and finish in mid-table in the Premier League. Our job security is only secure. We get a B+ from the board in terms of feedback, and they've dropped a few of the requests that they had in terms of the cultures. So now they want to make the most of set pieces, play entertaining football, play high-tempo pressing football. Looking at the supporters, we get a B+ there too, but they retain all of their demands. Play attacking football pleased, play direct football satisfied, make the most of set pieces pleased, play entertaining football very pleased, play counter-attacking football pleased. Be competitive against Aston Villa, and then it's Birmingham and Wolverhampton Wanderers. So a B+ from the supporters. We get a B+ from the board, but our job security is only secure going into Season 5. As we head towards Season 5, let's check in with our first team squad and show you what I feel my best 11 would be. So, starting at the back, we have Goncalves in goal. Roth, Van Hecke, Holding and Arthur now are my back 4. I then have Monchu, Wharton and Neto as my midfield 3. Unuvar on the left, Guilherme on the right, and Waper up top. Once again, let's show you Waper, just show you how ridiculous this player has been. Since he's been at the club, he has now scored 20 or more league goals in 3 successive seasons. He really is turning into a bit of a goal machine. 69 in 116 total appearances for all clubs. Luis Guilherme, he's developing nicely, once again making that right hand position his own. He has now played across 2 seasons, scored 14 goals, 13 assists and 3 player of the match awards, so developing nicely there. Nasir Nuvar is another one, been brilliant once again this season. Only 28 games played, but he had 8 goals, 7 assists, and got a 7 average rating across the season. Then we have Neto. He has been fantastic, although he's currently injured. 47 games this season, 13 goals, 10 assists. And next to him we have Wharton, who once again only played 7 games as a starter, but did have 28 other contributions, 4 goals, 4 assists, and he's once again developing nicely as a midfielder. Then have new signing Monchu, Van Hecker, and Holding in those positions. If we look at our assistants' best 11, so he would go with Goncalves, Roth, Holding, Van Hecker, Arthur, Monchu, Cassidy, Neto, Anuvar, Guilherme, and Waper. And then we have some new faces coming in there in the purple players. So Dane Scarlett, Amari Forson, Oscar Bob, Adam Wharton. We've got Lino Souza, who is another player we picked up from Arsenal on a free transfer. Didn't mention him because it's not really a big transfer. If we look at the assistant report, so weaknesses, teamwork, vision, tackling, bravery, penalties, concentration, passing, off the ball, stamina and strength. So a lot of work to be done to tick off some of those. But in terms of our strengths, goalkeepers, it's punching tendency. We have a number of youth prospects already at the club. Top goal scorer with Waper, goalkeeper depth, defensive depth and midfield. So we are going in the right direction. We are obviously building the right type of team. So I'm happy with my starting 11 going into season 5. With the transfer budget that's available, it might be going out and buying 1 or 2 pieces to put into the team as quality pieces. I don't know how much depth we really need, so it might be a case that we go out and buy 1 or 2 players and make them slightly bigger in terms of names if we can. So to round up season 4 in the competitions, we finished 5th in the Premier League, 70 points, only 8 behind Liverpool, who won the league. Europa League, we got all the way to the semi-finals where we come up against English competition, lost to Tottenham, knocked out in the 4th round of the FA Cup, knocked out in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup, and we won the Community Shield. So another successful season and another one that we can build upon going into the final season of the Save. As always, to kick the episode off, we're going to go through all of the transfers that happened in Season 5, all of the players that have left and all of the players that have arrived. And the first player to leave the club was Ainsley Maitland-Niles. We had an offer of around £9 million come in from Al Shabab. He was allowed to leave the club. The next player to go was Paulinho. He was another one who suffered with work permit issues towards the end of his time with us. Olympiacos came in. They gave us around £5.5 million, which was a great deal considering we hadn't paid that much for him in season number 1. And the final player to leave was Monchu. Didn't really plan on selling him, but Al Nassr came in with a bid of £35 million. And I thought, you know what? He's 28. We can probably replace him with another player of a similar ability with a bit of a younger age. So with those players leaving, let's see who we brought in. The first player to arrive for £25 million was Cole Palmer. Now, he was at Chelsea, obviously, but had moved to Rangers. And then Rangers were selling him. He almost joined Newcastle, but we hijacked the deal at the last moment. Gave him a bump in wages. He's on £91,000 at West Brom. But we managed to secure an English player who is young, can play across the middle of the park. I think he's going to be a fantastic player for the final season. The next signing was Czech Decore, 28 years old, Malian. He's big, he's strong. He replaces Monchu perfectly like for like. We sold Monchu for 35. We bought Decore for 35. And the final player to come in was Ivan Hamey. He's a left-sided player who has played for Braga, Porto and Nice in this save. He now comes to us and will occupy a left-sided berth. Will give a bit of competition to Nassi Anuvar, hopefully. So that was all the transfer business for the final season. Did it enable us to have a bigger push towards the top of the Premier League? Kicking off the competitions, we are looking at the Carabao Cup. We went in at the 3rd round stage, Drawn against Brentford, we scraped through. We had a 1-1 draw in the game and went through on penalties. In the fourth round, we were paired up against Sunderland. We would beat them 3-0. In the quarterfinals, we would play against Newcastle. A 2-0 victory got us into the semi-finals. We would play against Chelsea, and after a 2-2 draw across 2 games, we would win on penalties to be put in the final to play against Manchester City, where we would win 3-1, and that would complete the set of domestic cups. In this save, we have now won the FA Cup and we have won the League Cup. We also have that Community Shield too. So there is the Carabao Cup final. Goals from Guilherme, Unuvar and Decore would seal us another domestic cup. In the FA Cup, we would go in the third round. We would play against Manchester City there and we would win 3-2. In the fourth round, we would be paired off against Liverpool, where sadly, that's where our FA Cup run would come to an end. We would go out in the fourth round as we would lose 2-1. In the Europa League, we would start in the league phase, where we would finish 4th in the table. We'd have a record of playing 8 games, winning 6, drawing 1, losing 1, had a goal difference of 13, and we'd finish on 19 points, just 3 points off of Fiorentina, who would top the league phase. If we then move on to the round of 16, we were paired off against Monaco, where sadly we would exit the competition at the round of 16, losing 2-1 on aggregate. That means that in the Premier League, we were looking to better last season's performance, and we did. We would finish 2nd in the league. Now the board will be mightily annoyed that Aston Villa have gone on and won the Premier League, and that is because one of our objectives from the supporters was to finish above Aston Villa in the league. We couldn't do it. We got close. We were in a title race all the way to the wire. Aston Villa would win the league with 79 points. We would finish 2nd on 77, and that season we played 38 games. We won 25. We drew 2. Lost 11, had a goal difference of 23, so it's still improving, and we got 77 points to finish just 2 points off of winning the league. Looking at a few of the stats, Luis Guilherme was the top average rated player for our team with 7.26. He also had 6 Player of the Match awards. We had Arta and Jason Malumbi on 11 and 10 yellow cards in that. So a fantastic end to the 5 seasons, but it begs the question, can we really leave it there? Can we finish 2nd and not go on and try and win the Premier League? But what could happen in the Champions League? That is a big question that we're going to ask us. I think we need a 6th season. I think we're going to go for it. We're going to go and try our very best to get one step further in the Premier League and certainly give the Champions League a crack. So with us now going into a 6th season in the save, let's have a look at what the finances will be for that 6th season. So the transfer budget will be £62.8 million. The wage budget will be £1.9 million. We're currently spending 1.7. Our overall balance is £14.2 million. So once again, the board are prepared to back us with money that they don't really have. In terms of the club vision, so we are now very secure in the job. We have an A- from the board. Looking at the actionable objectives, work within the wage budget on course, spend the original transfer budget, delighted, increase commercial revenue. That is a big one for the club to survive. Informational objectives, expand the stadium. So the board now are prepared to spend the money on the stadium to try and get more people in to increase that revenue. By the end of next season, they want to be competitive in the Champions League and record a Premier League top half finish. Looking at the board feedback then, board cultures now, make the most of set pieces, pleased. Play entertaining football, pleased. Play high tempo pressing football, pleased. They are happy with the 1-0 victory against Villa. They are very pleased with the highly impressive 3-0 Premier League dismantling of Tottenham, and they're delighted with the positive atmosphere in the changing room. In terms of the supporters then, they still want the attacking football, the direct football, make the most of set pieces, play entertaining football and play counter-attacking football. They want us to be competitive against Aston Villa, so we got away with that one really because we were competitive by running them close and we did beat them during the season. And they want to be ahead of Birmingham City and finish above Wolves in the league. They were happy with the 3-0 dismantling of Tottenham, happy with the 1-0 victory against Aston Villa, and very pleased with the emphatic 3-0 Premier League win against Sunderland. We get an A- from the supporters, we get an A- from the board, and it's great feedback going into season number 6. So in preparation for season number 6, let's have a look at the first team and the starting 11 that I will be picking on more often than not, a regular basis. And I would go with Goncalves in goal, Roth, Van Hecke, Rodon and Arthur, Decore, Cassidy and Neto as my midfield 3. On the left, I would play Lewis Guilherme. On the right, Cole Palmer and Waper up top. It's again another one where Waper has really outperformed himself in this team. He scored another 21 league goals from 35 appearances and continues that run of not scoring less than 20 league goals in a single season. Lewis Guilherme, he is now started to really produce some of his best football in that season. 30 appearances, 7 goals, 10 assists, 6 Player of the Match awards and a 7.26 average rating. On the right-hand side, Cole Palmer. He came into the club at the start of the season. He played 37 league games, 7 goals, 6 assists, 2 Player of the Match awards, 6.82 average rating. Czech Decore was another one that came in for big money this season. He managed to play in 28 games with 3 goals, 6 assists. He's settled well into the team and really is that bruising midfielder in the middle of the park. If we go into the squad planner and look at the assistant best 11, so he would go with this lineup: Goncalves, Roth, Holding, Van Hecke, Arthur, Decore, Neto, Cassidy, Jaime, Guilherme and Waper up top. So a few small changes there from what my team would be. He prefers Jaime on the left, Guilherme on the right, whereas I have accommodated Palmer by moving Guilherme across, and I think that just works better, and it obviously hasn't been at the detriment of Waper. If we go into the assistant report then, so overall depth now is a weakness, but we've got £60 million to spend. Crossing, overall squad standard, apparently it's mediocre squad standard compared to the rest of the league, but we're outperforming teams because we just finished second in the Premier League. Pace, stamina, concentration, work rate. On the strengths, punching tendency, youth prospects, through balls, top goal scorer, best player form, goalkeeper depth, defensive depth. So there's depth in areas but not in others. So overall depth is not good and we are better in other areas. So going into season 6 with £60 million to spend, I'm not 100% sure where we're going to spend this money. Maybe goalkeeper, if anywhere. I think he's one. He's been, like I said, we bought him as a backup goalkeeper. He's ended up keeping the job long term. Looking across the back four, Roth, Van Hecke, Rodon and Arthur, they're all doing great jobs. Maybe could get an upgrade on Rodon. Not 100% sure if he's going to be a player that will end the save in that position, but going further up the pitch it just gets better and better. All the wonder kids that we managed to bring in have been absolutely fantastic. So with season 6 now to look forward to, I'm going to go off and prepare for that. Definitely going to look at some players that we can bring in. May as well spend the money if it's definitely going to be the final season. I only want one shot at the Champions League and at the Premier League. Let's kick off episode number 6 by looking at all of the transfers that have happened for the final season of the West Brom save. Let's kick things off by looking at the one player who left the club in season 6. That was Caen Barros. We had a bid of £15 million coming for him. It came from Al Wada out in the Middle East. Now was the time to take the bid. Bit sad that he'd been with me since the start, but we'd already placed him really with Decore and a few other midfield pieces that we brought in, so we allowed him to leave. So with him going, we needed a few players. I decided not to go too mental. The first of which that we brought in was Omar Sole. He was a sound purchase. I think he can slot in well at the back, and even if he isn't a starter, definitely can be a rotation option. And the big signing of season 6 is Ousmane Diomande. He's the one that completes the defensive package and hopefully will allow us the stability now to pump that goal difference even higher, with Waper scoring the goals and Diomande blocking the goals. So that's the transfer business. It's so short this time. We really wanted to get to the point and get on and try and win. Let's have a look at the competitions. So to kick things off, let's have a look at the Carabao Cup, where we entered at the third round stage. We would play Crystal Palace in the third round and beat them 5-0. In the fourth round, we would be drawn against Swindon Town, where we would beat them 2-0. We would then play in the quarterfinals against Southampton. We got lucky here. We had a 3-3 draw in the game, but did win on penalties. Then in the semi-finals, we were paired off against Ipswich Town, where we won 5-3 on aggregate. And we would play against Arsenal in the final, and we would beat them 3-2 to lift the Carabao Cup once again. Let's have a little look at that final. So goals from Cassidy, Waper and Cole Palmer, getting us across the line after we blew a 2-goal lead. We had 10 shots, scored 8. Had shot 8 shots on target. We had an XG of 1.92, and we won 3-2 to lift the Carabao Cup once again. In the FA Cup, we would enter at the third round stage, where we would play against Blackpool. Embarrassingly, we needed a replay to beat them 3-2. In the fourth round, we would be paired off against Middlesbrough, where we would exit the competition, losing 3-1 in the fourth round. For the first time, we would be playing in the Champions League this time, and we would go on in the league phase to finish in 12th place, where we would play 8 games. We would win 4 against Wolfsburg, Ludogorets, Rangers and Real Madrid. We actually beat Real Madrid in the Champions League. We drew 2 against Inter and Ajax, and we lost 2 against Chelsea and Napoli. We had an 8-goal difference and finished on 14 points, which was just 1 point behind Trabzonspor and 2 points behind Chelsea and Real Madrid. That meant we would go into the knockout playoff round, where we would be drawn against Aston Villa, and sadly our first Champions League adventure would end in the knockout playoff round. That meant that all our attentions turned back to the Premier League, where we were looking to go one better than last season, but sadly we couldn't do it. We finished 5th this time. I think the Champions League being added to the domestic cups was just one push too far for this squad. We finish in 5th place. We get 67 points this time. If we break that down, we played 38. We won 21. We drew in 4. We lost 13. We had a 28-goal difference and finished on 67 points. Sadly, there aren't really any stats to go over, as Malumbi is the only player on the list there, and he was top of the yellow cards tree. So, Season 6 comes to an end with a 5th place in the Premier League. A Champions League campaign to be proud of. For the first attempt, we got out of the league phase. We got knocked out by an English team in the playoff round. We finished in the 4th round of the FA Cup, and we won the Carabao Cup for the second time. If we were to continue the save into a 7th season, which we're not going to, but if we did, the board would back us once again. They would have given us £64.5 million to go out and spend once again. They would have given us a wage budget of £2.2 million with about £100,000 in wiggle room there. But the overall balance still is only £20 million. So whilst it's okay going out and spending the transfer budget every single season, the club's revenue coming back in simply isn't enough to be sustainable, I don't think. In terms of the board and the club vision, overall, we are untouchable. We get an A+ finally from the board. The actionable objectives were work within the wage budget, which we did, spend the original transfer budget, which we did, increase the commercial revenue, they were satisfied, and they're still expanding the stadium. At the end of the current season, they wanted to reach the Champions League proper, we did. Record a top half finish in the Premier League, we did. Be competitive in the FA Cup and be competitive in the Carabao Cup, well, we won that. In terms of the board feedback, make the most of set pieces, they're pleased. Play entertaining football, pleased. Play high tempo, pressing football, they were pleased. From the supporters though, we only get a C+, which is strange because we did really well. We gave a good account of ourselves and we had another trip to Wembley with a trophy. So, play attacking football, pleased. Direct football, satisfied. Make the most of set pieces, pleased. Entertaining football, and counter-attacking football, we passed those. Be competitive against Aston Villa. Once again, we finished below them, so they are now disappointed. And get the better of our rivals, Birmingham, and finish above Wolves in the league, which we did, so they're delighted. So, all in all, a C+ from the supporters and an A+ in the final season from the board is really, really good feedback. So the final thing to do is check in and have a look at how our starting 11 would look if we were going into the next season. This is how we will leave the team, and I think it's a really well structured team. It's gone Calves at the back, Roth at left back, Diomande, Van Hecke and Arthur. Then you've got Decore, Cassidy and Neto, Lewis Gilherme, Cole Palmer and Wiper up the top of the pitch. It's really good. It's got young players, it's got experienced players, it's got attacking, aggressive players. I think that we've done a really, really good job of this, and I really enjoyed this rebuild. Getting some of these wonder kids and fitting them all into the jigsaw puzzle, changing the tactic, it's been fantastic. If we look at Wiper and show you his end of save stats, he has been fantastic. Sadly, that record of scoring 20 goals in every Premier League season did go in the final season, but you absolutely cannot fault him. 108 goals from 184 games across his career. It's been absolutely brilliant. Looking at Cole Palmer, he has again been a really good contributor for goals, assists. 36 appearances, 9 goals, 8 assists across this season, 16 goals in 41 in all competitions. On the other side, Lewis Gilherme is now starting to come towards the peak of his powers. Look at those physical stats. Whenever you've seen a West Brom player that is valued up to £91 million. Career stats then at the club, he spent 4 seasons, 34, 13, 4 and 5 in the final season in terms of goals, assists, player of the match awards, 19 goals from 42 games across all competitions. We have players like Neto, who has really started to develop himself into a midfield maestro, 26 years old now. We also have Cassidy, who again, as I said, bounced around a little bit. It's kind of found his home now, valued at £67 million, has been a pivotal part of our team. Decore, been Mr. Reliable, 29 years old, and another one, like I said, that bruising midfielder that can really help out. Diomande slotted in well next to Van Hecke, and our wing backs were sorted. Roth has been really good, 24 years old still developing, and on the right hand side, Arthur has been dependable and reliable. So it's been really, really a fantastic save. That first 11 is something I am very, very proud of. If we go into the club info finally and go to history and overview, let's look at the trophy haul then before we round it off. So we couldn't add to their league title, which was in 1920. Sadly, no post-war titles for West Brom. But we did add to the FA Cup haul. We now sit on 6 with a 2026 FA Cup win. In terms of the Championship, we also won the Championship in the first season, so the 23-24 season. Carabao Cup, we have added 2 of those in 28 and 29. And in the Community Shield, we would go on and add to that total by beating Manchester City in season number 2, I think it was. So all in all, it's been an absolutely fantastic save. West Brom are a top club. They aren't run very well, I have to say. They've had ownership issues, and their players, in terms of real life, not to slag West Brom off at all, but they have older players on bigger wages at the start of the save that you really need to kind of chop down and start building a younger squad going forward. Certainly if they want to get into the Premier League in real life, I think that they need to go with youth. But West Brom, and this save has been absolutely brilliant fun. I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you want a challenge, West Brom really are a challenge, and they are a great team to manage in FM24. Right then, if you're still with me at this point of the video, firstly, a big thank you. Secondly, you could hit the like and subscribe button just to help the channel out. That's all I ask. Please just like and subscribe. It's been fantastic watching the channel grow. It's all down to people like yourself who come along and interact with the channel. And once again, I cannot thank you all enough. Before you do go, don't forget there are other things on the channel. Let's plays, hints and tips, tutorials, wonder kids. Try and cover so many different topics right here on the channel. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for watching the West Brom save. I'll see you on another video very soon.